This statement is going to sound provocative. Let's see if we can run with it though, and find if it yields anything helpful. The language of the masters. Now, that's a heavy thing to say. It implies, without any explanation, it brings forth all kinds of different ideas. But what I'm referring to now is, let's define what I mean by masters. The masters in this case are those who control society. And I'm speaking specifically about the first world, where science and its child technology dominate and surround us everywhere. Science, of course, being the method of inquiry in looking into the world and discerning truth from what is false, or what is probable is probably a better way to say it. And the technology being the child of that inquiry, the fruits of those efforts. And you look all around us, everywhere, it's everywhere in this world. We can't escape it. And whether we like it or not, whether we are an advocate or a fan of the scientific method of inquiry, or the natural inquiry, as I like to call it, or whether we whether we like it or not, it is here, and it basically governs the organization and manifestation of every element of our lives, and that is likely to continue. There are three scenarios that I see for the future. And it all depends on what the populace, those of us all around here, everywhere in society, is able to do in terms of understanding the language of the masters. And I'll talk more about what I mean by that language of the masters in just a moment. But let me give you three scenarios. First, if what I said is true, that science and technology are everywhere and are basically some of the key elements in the modern world, and that will continue to be the case on a going forward basis, then we have to ask ourselves, who is controlling that? Which people among us are guiding are steering the engine of science and technology? And for the most part, it is basically those who understand it at this point. The sciences are in the Western world, to a great extent, the domain, the frontiers of scientific inquiry are the domain of the academic institutions and research institutions, and technology is then used in large measure by private industry, taking away from the discoveries that are made on the scientific front. So science and technology work hand in hand, and those are very elitist. Both of those are very elitist institutions. Ivy League and below college institutions are populated and run by the best educated among us. And the corporations that create the technology that we use in every aspect of our lives are run by the wealthiest and best educated among us as well. So we already have a disparity in terms of who is controlling this incredible font of this cornucopia of improved living that we see all around us, if we want to call it that. Now, we've already got the seeds for one of three scenarios. I just set the setting for one of three scenarios that I see is going to happen in the future. The first is an enhancement of what I just described, where if the common people, the folks like you and I, assuming you're a regular Joe just like me, if the common people continue, because largely we are ignorant. Now, I mean, and I'm speaking now, I'm targeting specifically my own country, the United States. We are ignorant of how science works, and we are ignorant of the scientific method of thinking and how to use our minds in the way that scientists use their minds to discover and explore the world. And if we remain ignorant of that, we can't understand what they're talking about or what they're doing, and we are therefore unable to participate in decisions along those lines. So if that continues, if this gap, this science gap, listen to those cicadas, wow. If that science, they're just flying, if that understanding gap continues to grow, we will see what is that typical strong disparity between the haves and the have-nots. The haves, of course, being those who control science and technology, and those of us who are the consumers. We've already got the label. The consumers of that technology. And as Steve Jobs once said, and I know he didn't mean it along these lines, but it fits. It's a very apt statement. He once said regarding his company, Apple Computers, their inquiry into what users wanted in the iPad. He said, it's not the consumer's job to know what they want. It's not the consumer's job to know what they want. Indicating very bluntly, a captain of industry indicating that he does not expect his customers to participate in that process. And if that continues to grow in that regard, then what we will have in the future is basically a society of true kings, the kings of science and technology, kings and queens, who will control government and industry. And government, I mean it. Government, in the United States at least, shows very little interest in understanding how science works and the scientific method of thought. And they will lose their control, and they will be controlled by those who have the understanding and fearfully, I believe, the audacity to believe that they know what's best for us. Steve Jobs, I have great respect for you, and I think you're a wonderful man at what you do. But it scares me sometimes to imagine so much power in the hands of so few, so much real power in the hands of so few. So that's the first thing, and they're going to have, and that attitude that they're going to have, and I'm not meaning sorry at Steve. I'm moving away from Steve now. That attitude that they're going to have is a common one that we've seen before. Think about the 19th century colonizing forces of the Western world, traveling to foreign exotic locations and stepping off of their ships, onto the sands of what they consider to be the savages, who were waving spears and dangling trinkets. And what was the attitude that they had? They had heathens, the ignorant, savage heathens, who needed to be controlled and who needed to come under the hand of what came to be called the white man's burden. Maybe one day we will have the scientist's burden. I don't know, where they see an obligation, and with their lab coats and their robots, they see an obligation to protect and guide the rest of us, where we will lose control because we don't understand and we can't participate in the process of science. So that's the first scenario. Very, very scary scenario. Now the second one is equally interesting, scary in a different way. And the second one is where the people, maybe a product of the first, where that disparity arises between the haves and the have-nots, the science and technology have, those who understand science and technology and those who do not, and a rebellion occurs, where basically those who are under control rise up against the machine, so to speak, and trample it asunder. Now, it's happened before. Witness the Library of Alexandria, the sacking of the Library of Alexandria, and the skinning alive of the female librarian of that great institution of the ancient world, where basically the populace determined that they had enough of these elitists and basically wrecked it asunder, and a great deal of some of the most incredible works of antiquity in terms of intellectual thought were lost in that. Now that kind of thing has happened over and over again. You can witness it in every culture. The Cultural Revolution in China. Basically where a great upheaval occurs against the institution in control, and we can see that the institution in control in the modern world is the institution of science and technology. And if the populace, if the rabble, so like you, we get fed up with it, we could rise up and bring it down. Now I don't know how far down it would go. The worst case scenario could be, or maybe the best case scenario could be, that it could be torn completely asunder. Famine, starvation. I'm being extremist now to make a point. Famine, starvation, civil war, unrest would be the result, and what we may end up at the end is a civilization deprived of excess population and technology, and reverted back to a more simpler agrarian existence. We basically may uproot the whole thing outright and go back to being more simple humans. I mean, maybe that wouldn't be such a bad thing, say, for all the anarchy and terror that would ensue between the start and the end of that revolution. So two scenarios there. We have the first I just said, where the rise of the elite ruling class, scientific ruling class. The two, the rebellion of those who don't understand, and the drowning under of the scientific way of life. And three, that brings us to the third one. The third, which I hope is the one that will happen, but I have my doubts. The third is sad. I'm an optimistic guy, but even an optimistic guy, I can't rally my enough optimism for this one. The third is that we as a species will begin to, despite what our beliefs are, I'm not saying that we have to give up our beliefs, that we have to become that we all have to become atheists and renounce our faith or become eternal skeptics. But what I mean is, if we as a species could begin to teach our children the scientific method of inquiry, the basic principle of observation to develop a hypothesis, to create tests to examine that hypothesis and determine where its faults are, and if it proves worthy, to then continue furthermore with more tests and ask others to try the same as well. And if we can get a consensus that the group seems to think that this idea works, then to go from that hypothesis and develop it into a theory, and then start over from the beginning again with the tests again, and continue on in a manner of progress, just what nature does here with all around us. Look at nature's this great success that nature has in store, example for us. We can do the same if, as a species, we adopt that same frame of mind, not as an overall arcing way of thought. We don't want to all become Vulcans, I don't think. It's not logical, Captain. Dr. McCoy, I don't understand why you're so emotional. We don't need to become like that, but we do need to have that as a tool in our brain, as a big tool. It's a monkey wrench. It's a very general purpose monkey wrench. Every toolbox needs a monkey wrench, and every human brain needs to understand the method and systematic process by which science goes about its business. Why? Because that's what this world is based on now. And if we're going to participate in it, if we're going to act in a manner of electing officials that we can support, that represent our interests and our aims, and if we're going to be able to discern fraud from fraudulent, basically snake water salesmen, from those that have an authentic and genuine article on offer. In the modern world, we need to understand that process and that methodology. And let me just say one more time, it doesn't mean we need to give up our religion. Those of you who have a faith don't need to give up your faith. Those of you who have a more spiritual way of life, even if you're not religious, a spiritual way of thinking, you don't have to give it up. But all I'm asking is that you and this goes for me too. I'm not saying this for you. I'm saying for all of us. I'm not all of us. Let's do what we can to learn how scientists think and how they produce, how that leads them to the production of technology, which impacts us in our daily life all the time, and teach that methodology to our children. Teach the scientific method in schools. And I'm not saying at the exclusion of anything else, but if we can do that, if we can arm ourselves as the populace of every society, if we can arm ourselves with that basic understanding, we will be in a position to guide and control those who are truly running things, and to not rise up in arms with spears and torches when the day comes that they have so much control that we can tolerate it no longer, and thus throw ourselves back into a period without the wonders that we have now. Thank you for listening to me. I hope that this is helpful, and I hope that it's been taken in the right vein. This particular video is not an attack against faith at all, or spirituality. This is simply a plea that as a species we learn to understand how our species is proceeding at this time, so that we can be in control in a very open fashion. Thank you, everybody. I need to get to work. You have a great day. Bye-bye.